David had a full-blown panic attack after he thought he saw his late girlfriend Celeste alive in public, and although it turned out to be a lookalike, the episode has exploded into speculation that his fear may point to something darker. Fuel for those who already question his role in her death. What unfolded that day reads like a moment ripped from a true crime doc. Ordinary light, ordinary people, an ordinary street. And then a man collapsing into visible, ragged panic at the sight of a stranger who simply resembled a woman whose death still haunts the headlines. Witnesses who watched the scene say David's color drained from his face, that his breathing turned shallow and rapid, and that he seemed unable to ground himself until someone steadied him in a chair. It wasn't the startled flinch of a private sorrow. It was a visceral, physical meltdown, the kind of breakdown that bypasses speech and goes straight to the body's most primitive alarms. Please do not forget to like this video, share and subscribe to this channel if you want more updates like this. Thank you. Now, let's get back into the video. By the time the girl, bewildered and clearly innocent, heard that she bore a resemblance to Celeste, the moment had already metastasized into rumor. People murmured. Phones came out. A few bystanders speculated aloud. Why such an extreme reaction unless there was something to hide? Those quick comments moved like tinder, and within hours the incident had spread beyond the block. Social feeds, neighborhood chats, comment sections hungry for a pattern to fit the noise. For a public hungry for narrative, David's panic became, for many, the missing piece they've been waiting for. Context matters. Since Celeste's death, David's behavior has been under a microscope. Some who knew him say he seemed detached at public moments and oddly performative at others. Others have described fits of sleepless pacing and quiet, muttered rehearsals of conversations in the dark. Whether these reports are true or exaggerated, the new panic episode layered neatly onto an existing backdrop of suspicion. And where suspicion already exists, an emotional collapse reads as corroboration to those ready to believe the worst. There's a psychological logic to that reaction, too. Panic attacks rarely arrive out of nowhere. They're often triggered by trauma, by guilt, by a mind trying desperately to protect itself from the consequences of an action it cannot erase. That a face resembling Celeste could trigger such a profound physiological response invites questions about what that face unlocked in David's memory, a memory many argue he should not have if he were entirely at peace with the past. For spectators, the sight felt like a confession, unspoken, the body betraying what the mouth refused to admit. We must be careful, of course, in translating a single dramatic moment into incontrovertible truth. Legally, a panic attack is not evidence of criminality. Emotion is messy and subjective. Trauma and anxiety can produce intense reactions in innocent people, and misinterpretation is a real danger. Yet in the theater of public judgment, feeling looks an awful lot like fact. When someone who has been under scrutiny suddenly collapses at a reminder of the deceased, it's easy for the crowd to say, "There is your answer." That is how reputations are made and unmade in public life. What made the scene even more haunting was its ordinary setting. This was not a stage courtroom. It was a coffee shop, a crosswalk, a neighborhood that thought it had seen everything until that day. People who happened to be there became witnesses in a story they did not choose to tell, and their accounts, shared in breathless whispers and later, in the louder echo of social posts, helped the event metastasize. The girl who resembled Celeste walked away bewildered. David walked away shaken. The community walked away with a fresh suspicion that would be hard to forget. Beyond the moment lies the slow, corrosive effect of guilt on the psyche. Friends who once defended him, according to some sources, have started to describe a man unmoored. Unpredictable bursts of anger, long silences, sleepless nights. In short, if there's truth to those private story reports, you are about to hear is one of the most shocking downfalls is not an isolated incident, but the latest tells how David, in a widening one scene as a young rising artist with those watching, it ended up standing like mind slowly closing on confessing itself, to the unaliving edges of denial fraying under strain of sentenced to life imprisonment. Though symbolism plays a role here too. Maybe he was never the real monster. The lookalike is a classic
rather
device,
the shield for someone
a
else
mirror
whose
that
identity
forces a character
may forever
to
remain
face
in
what
the
they have
shadows.
tried to bury.
From the very
The
beginning
universe
of this tragic
placing a woman
story,
who could
Air
pass
was
for
heavy
Celeste on the
disbelief.
same street as David,
Because David was
the type
no
of coordinary
ordinary
that
named
narrative-hungry audiences
He was a type of artist
as
critics
moral
call the
reckoning.
future sound.
Whether providence or
a
coincidence,
voice meant to define a
it
generation.
served the same purpose.
A creative who built his career
It revealed
on
something about
vulnerability
David
and
that
soul.
his carefully worded
He was just in
statements
his late
had not.
teens when
People
started
prefer
calling
visible
him a
tells to
phenomenon.
guarded words.
The kind of talent that
They
only
prefer
comes
the
around
physical
once in a
proof of
decade.
trembling hands
And yet
to
here he
rehearse
stood in the
phrases.
courtroom, hands
And so
cuffed,
fallout grew.
eyes red,
For some,
lips trembling.
This episode was
confessing
proof
to
enough to
something
cement
so
their belief
dark
in David's
so
culpability.
disturbing.
For others,
that
it was
even
a
the
tragic
most hardened
misinterpretation.
journalist could not bring
An
themselves
innocent
to write
man
about it
overwhelmed by
without
grief,
pause and debris,
haunted not by
Please
guilt
do not
but by
forget
the
to
memory
like
of a
this video.
loved one.
Share
Both
and subscribe to
interpretations
this
are
channel.
possible.
If you want more
The
updates
difference
like
between
this.
them comes down to
Thank
what you
you.
believe about human
Now,
behavior in crisis.
let's get back into the video.
Does Panic
The beginning of his
guilt,
downfall
what he
was not
unbearable
sudden,
weight of love
though.
lost? It
That
was gradual.
split in interpretation
Hidden in
is
whispers,
exactly
late-night
what keeps
rumors,
stories like this
encrypted
alive
posts
and
online.
mills.
When Celeste, a
24-hour
15-year-old
full
full
of
of
life,
life, then there's the
disappeared.
matter of
Her
consequences.
family's desperate search
A panic
collided
attack
with
doesn't
David's
substitute
glittering
for
world
an
of
investigation,
tours and
evidence,
interviews.
or a court verdict.
The intersection
And
of
those who
forever
want true
destroyed
accountability
both.
will be wise
At
to
first,
press for
nobody
facts.
suspected him.
Timeline,
After all,
forensics,
why would
witness
they?
statements.
David
rather
was
than
adored by
rely solely
millions.
on a moment
His
of
fan base
emotional
treated him
collapse.
like he could do no wrong.
Yet in practice,
And his music
the
painted
court
him
of public
as someone
opinion
sensitive to
rarely
pain.
waits.
Not
People
the cause
form
of it.
narratives
But
quickly,
the night
and then
authorities
look for the facts
discovered
to fit
Celeste's
those
body
narratives,
inside the trunk of a
not the
car
other way
linked
around.
him.
This
The
is
narrative
why
began
moments like
shifting
David's
violently.
panic are so potent.
What followed was chaos.
They arrive ready-made
Social
to
media
confirm the bias
explosions.
of the audience.
Fans defending
Even
him
as I lay
blindly.
out the scene,
Critics
the
dissecting
moral
his
ambiguity
lyrics for hidden
remains.
confessions.
There is a certain
police
human
moving
poetry
quickly to
being
detain him
haunted by the echo
when he
of
appeared
someone
in
you
court
lost.
for the first time.
And there is an
Equally
equally human
surreal.
desire for justice
The
when
courtroom
life
was
is
cut
packed
short
wall
under
to wall with
suspicious
circumstances.
Cameras
The two
flashing
impulses
every
coexist
second uneasily.
The quiet
David's
sobbing of
breakdown
Celeste's
might be
mother
genuine
echoing
grief
over the clicking
exposed
shutters.
raw.
David
It might be a
walking wearing
guilty
simple
conscience
gray suit.
unraveling,
But there was
it
nothing
might be
ordinary
both.
about the aura
The
he carried.
ambiguity is what drives
It was the
viewers to
aura
line
of
up
a
on
fallen
one
star
side
or the other.
Someone too young
Each
to be
side
facing life in
selecting
prison,
the evidence that
yet too
suits its
guilty
narrative.
to ever walk free
What is
again.
undeniable
The prosecution
is the power
wasted
of
no
unguarded
time.
moments. They laid
Actors
out
can
every
script their way
detail
through
meticulously.
interviews.
Lawyers
The
can
timeline
craft
of Celeste's
airtight
disappearance.
statements.
But a
digital
body that
footprint,
convulses with panic
the
is harder
testimonies
to
of
stage.
people who had seen her last.
That's why
the
for
discovery
many,
of her body,
what they witnessed
the fact
on
that
that
her
street
DNA
feels like
and
truth,
traces of her belongings
not
were
the
linked
letter law,
directly back to
but the
David's
spirit
car.
of something deeper.
The evidence was
The
crushing,
human capacity
almost
to betray
suffocating,
ourselves through the very
and as
things
it
we
piled
cannot
up,
control.
whispers
And
for a
turn into
public
gas
that
in the
craves
gallery.
clarity.
David
That
sat
kind
there,
of
head
rawness
down,
reads like
knuckles
revelation.
white.
In
And
the
for
end,
a long time he refused
this
to look
episode is
anyone in the
another
eye.
chapter.
His
of a
defense
story that is
team
far
tried
from
desperately
closed.
to shift the narrative.
It is giving critics fresh
suggesting
fuel
possibilities of
and left
manipulation,
sympathizers
coercion,
scrambling
or
for
even
alternative
framing.
explanations.
But none of it could stand
It is
the weight
laid
of
bare the
truth
hazards
that
of
eventually
reading guilt
poured
into
from
David's own
and
lips.
the equally risky
Because one
business of
afternoon,
excusing
midway through the
alarming
trial,
behavior,
David
as
stood
mere
up,
human
asked to
frailty.
address the court, and confessed. The silence that followed was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. Total, absolute silence, as if the air itself was too stunned to move. He admitted he was the one responsible for Celeste's death, though his words carried a strange ambiguity, a shadowy undertone that suggested layers beneath the surface. "I did it," he said, voice breaking. "But not everything is what it seems." His confession, though damning, left more questions than answers. Why did he do it? What pushed a promising young star into such darkness? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, was he protecting someone else? There were whispers in the courtroom, whispers that have since followed him into the prison where he will spend the rest of his life. Some say David took the fall to shield someone close to him, someone powerful enough to manipulate the narrative,